Well, ending the war in Ukraine does appear to be a growing aim for the US president, who indicated while in Scotland that he is tightening the screws on Vladimir Putin. Gaza, too, is a conflict he says he is working to solve. But it remains to be seen if all or any of this talk will bear fruit. Our senior politics reporter, Stephen Collinson, has been writing about just that. In his latest piece entitled Gaza and Ukraine, will show whether Trump is a true leader or just a bully. And he joins me now from Washington. And our viewers can find that piece on our digital platforms, of course. Trump, Stephen, is promising to end wars on many fronts. Have a listen to what he said just a few hours ago before he departed Scotland.
We'll play it very quickly, and then I go back to D.C. and we put out fires all over the world. We did one yesterday. As you know, we stopped a war, but we stopped about 5 wars. So that's much more important than playing golf. As much as I like it, it's much more important.
And he is, as I'm told, still in Scotland, actually, and departs in the next hour. Yet have a listen to what he says, and the reality is very different. Walk us through what we can expect from the US president, to your mind.
Yeah, he was talking there about intervening in the conflict between Thailand and Cambodia. And there have been occasions when the president has inserted himself in these conflicts and has appeared to make a little bit of a difference. The clash between India and Pakistan over Kashmir earlier this year was a case in point, although the Indians disputed that Trump really did anything. The problem with these two massive wars in Gaza and Ukraine is that there's been a big gap, I think, between aspiration and action. The administration doesn't seem to know how to use tools and influence to coerce various parties to the table, or is simply unwilling to do so. So while the president says that he's going to now get involved in a big aid mission to Gaza, I think that's reasonable. He's facing increasing international and even domestic pressure to do so. Is he then going to apply his administration to the task of breaking this underlying cause, which is the Israelis' determination to continue bombarding Gaza to try and root out Hamas, and Hamas's own intransigence and willingness to have its people in Gaza, the Palestinian civilians, pay a terrible price for its continued survival? Is there any reason to think that the administration can unlock that underlying cause? Experience so far in the last 6 months doesn't really lead us to believe that it can.
Yeah. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and the British Prime Minister himself, Keir Starmer, both went up to see Trump at his golf resort in Turnberry in Scotland. He was mixing personal business with diplomatic efforts. They had to make the trip to see him. What did you make of this strategy?
Well, I think it's shows us the influence and the power of Trump, at least when it comes to allied leaders who generally genuflect before him because they're worried what he'll do if they don't. The EU trade deal has caused quite a backlash in Europe, and the optics of Ursula von der Leyen going there and offering Trump this deal have proven very politically dangerous for her. We saw Keir Starmer show up as a guest in his own United Kingdom yesterday, and Trump appeared to be the one that was holding all the power. So I think that is a real illustration of the position that Trump is in right now. But is he willing, therefore, to take action and to increase leverage over leaders who are less accommodating to what he wants to do? People like President Vladimir Putin or President Xi Jinping. If you look at Trump's remarks on Ukraine, he says, okay, now I'm going to put more pressure on the Russians. I'm fed up with Putin ignoring me. Is he therefore going to go ahead with secondary sanctions, which would sanction countries like India and China for continuing to buy Russian oil and bankrolling the war? That would impose a significant impact on the US economy, could even spike oil prices, push the US economy into recession. Is Trump prepared to pay the price politically for using that leverage I think, again, as with the Gaza situation, I think we remain to be convinced.
Stephen Collinson's in the House out of Washington for you today. Well, we kick off today with US President Donald Trump wrapping up a visit to Scotland, where he expanded both his business empire and his role as a global statesman.
We'll play it very quickly, and then I go back to D.C. and we put out fires all over the world. We did one yesterday. As you know, we stopped a war, but we've stopped about 5 wars. So that's much more important than playing golf. As much as I like it, it's much more important.
Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu?
Shut up. We're working together. We're going to try and get things straightened out for the world. Thank you very much.
Mr. Trump actually broke with the Israeli Prime Minister over the situation in Gaza and the hunger crisis there. He also took a harder line on the war against Ukraine, giving the Russian president less than 2 weeks to accept a ceasefire or face punishing secondary sanctions. CNN's Jeff Zeleny has been covering it all for us from Scotland. He joins me now from Edinburgh. He clearly does enjoy a round of golf, but pointing out that is not the only reason that he is here. And certainly we have heard an awful lot from him since he's been in Scotland. Jeff, what exactly did Donald Trump mean in those comments we just heard as he capped off this trip?
Becky, I think one of the most profound things that happened on the president's trip, aside from golf, yesterday when he broke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by bluntly saying that, yes, those pictures of starvation are real. You can't fake that. That was quite extraordinary. And it's exactly what British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, in going to see President Trump, was hoping for. He was hoping to get him on the same page as much of the world to recognize the atrocities and the deepening crisis there. So even though the images are obvious, the American president really hadn't talked about it in quite those terms. So we will see from a policy matter what actually comes from it. That, of course, is true for everything that happened here. But the relationship between the U.S. And Israel and Trump and Netanyahu is already a little bit frostier than previous presidents have had. So we will see if there's any pressure applied for more of a ceasefire. Trump has talked about pledging to create food centers to see that the aid is established and distributed more freely. We'll see if that happens. But also on Russia, it's notable that a sense of frustration, almost a sense of scorn from Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin. I mean, he once said not that long ago that a face-to-face meeting would solve everything. And now President Trump's saying he doesn't even want to talk to Putin. Let's listen.
I'm not so interested in talking anymore. He talks, we have such nice conversations, such respectful and nice conversations, and then people die the following night with a missile going into a town and hitting, recently, I guess, the nursing home, but they hit other things. Whatever they hit, people die.
So now the clock is running. President Trump said yesterday 10 to 12 days. So that is less than 2 weeks. Is he going to back that up with actually imposing secondary sanctions on Russia, which could be pretty crippling, but that would also mean the U.S. would have to effectively take action against India, an ally, China, obviously an adversary, because they're, of course, doing business with Russia on the oil front, helping to fund the war. So a couple pretty significant developments here with Russia, Ukraine, and a whole lot of golf here in Scotland, Becky.
You're right. Jeff, good to have you. Thank you very much indeed.